All right, let's move now to the protracted wage talks between government and civil servants. After last year's imposition of a 3% increase and government defaulting on the third year of a wage deal during COVID, unions are determined to get a decent increase. The new offer is now 7.5%. I'm joined now by Riefdah Ajam, Secretary General of Fedusa, the Federation of Unions of South Africa. Thank you so much for joining us. So just give us details of the offer on the table. My understanding is it's a 2-year offer, is that correct?
Good evening to you, Sally, and good evening to the listeners. Thank you for the opportunity. Indeed, it is. We have been moving a lot closer, considering that the negotiations process is one of give and take. We've always approached it in good faith, and considering where the initial demands were and what the offer by government has been, we are amenable at this stage to a multi-term 2-year agreement that incorporates your CPI, and over the 2-year period, there'll be gradual adjustments. So we are currently vetting our members now in order for us to be able to give a definitive indication on what the way forward is.
All right, so it's in the hands of the members now. We do remember, of course, that government reneged on the third year of a 3-year wage deal, citing COVID and times are tight, etc., etc. Talk to me about the trust relationship between government and the unions. There's been a lot of talk at the bargaining table. Has trust been repaired?
Well, Sally, we've attempted to find common ground. It hasn't been very easy, considering what had happened during the height of the pandemic, when, as you rightly indicate, government had reneged on the latter part of the agreement. That slowly but surely continued to move in the direction of putting South Africa first, putting service delivery first, and making sure that we continue to listen to our members. So at the stage, government has been listening on many fronts to the concerns that we've had as Labour, especially in terms of that very trust deficit. So as we have moved on from 2023 negotiations to now focusing on 2023-2024, we have attempted to bridge that divide, and by signalling the intent and by virtue of where we are at the stage, it's not at a stage where it is 100%, but it is now at the point where we are starting to talk far more than what we have done in the past, by ensuring that we legitimize talks within the PSCBC and no other front. Only legitimate talks are held in the PSCBC, to which we continue to hold the majority as the Fedusa caucus alongside SATU.
Of course, the process is that the new offer is then taken to members. What if members of one union say no and members of another union say yes? How is that resolved?
That is the process of democracy, Sally, and we are mandate makers. We put out the positions to the members. We explain it to them in detail, as we have done at the press briefing that was held yesterday in Johannesburg. And naturally so, we will advance on the issue. But the attempts that we have done yesterday in particular is to demystify some of the areas that were out there. We have outlined in many instances aspects that are on the table, and currently it is a given situation that on both sides of the divide, those that hold the majority and those that are currently in the minority will continue to advance the issues. But with the transparency that we have continued to push within our caucus, the Fedusa caucus in particular, we are hopeful and we are positive that by continuing to advance in the way that we have done, we will see the outcome which has always been in the best interest of our members.
I just want to pick up on what I said about what if there's disagreement. We're seeing reports in News 24 this evening that there is a minority that is rejecting the 7.5% offer. Can you confirm that?
Sally, I can only confirm what has come through from the majority unions, and those are the unions belonging to the Fedusa caucus, that would be Hospice, NAPTOSA, SAOU, as well as PSA. We continue to work together with SATU in line with that very mandate that has been given to our members, and we continue to hold majority, currently known as the 539 grouping. So any other agreement cannot be legitimized. The agreement has been concluded, or we are hoping that for the 31st of March, that agreement will be concluded within the PSCBC. So by the very laws of nature, in terms of bargaining, you cannot conclude an agreement with a minority grouping. We are hoping that those that are outside of the chamber will join us in forces so that we stand united, organized labor in advancing public services. But for now, Sally, it is the majority unions that hold the process. It is the majority unions that have continued to stay in chambers, that have engaged with the employer as government, and can be the only narrative that we can advance. It is simply untrue that you can conclude an agreement with a minority party.
I hear you, but it does seem that NAHAWU, the National Education Hospital Workers Association, of course, they went out on that very disruptive strike just recently, while, as you say, unions such as your own and SATU Teachers Union stayed in, continued to negotiate. If they're out in the cold now, what's to stop them, theoretically, from saying, no, we don't accept your deal, we're going to go on strike again, or other members who are not happy are going to go on strike? I mean, is that a very real possibility, do you think?
Well, it is their right to disagree. It is their right to reject the offer. They naturally are equally so going through the same balloting process that we have done with our members. And the agreement that you are referring to is the cessation agreement, where they had then concluded that in a way to come back into the chamber. But ultimately, with the majority that continues to be advanced, it is only the majority grouping that is able to conclude the agreement. I re-emphasize 53.9% is the majority. So unfortunately, as much as we would want them to come into chamber and move in the same direction, it is fortunate, not a reality, that a minority grouping can conclude an agreement on behalf of the collective.
Okay, so my understanding is the majority of people, a majority of unions seem to be moving towards accepting this offer. It's a minority position. I suppose in that sense, that that suggests a bit of a failure for collective bargaining if ultimately they don't go along with the majority. Am I understanding it correctly?
You are spot on, Sally. It is 100% correct in this instance. Once again, very unfortunate that we are not united. But when you take a look at the dynamics of the game and the very nature of bargaining in any democratic process, it is the majority that continue to advance the positions at this stage. And at any given stage, in any process, there could be a turnaround of events. But up until now, we have continued to hold on to that majority position. And we are hoping that before the end of March this year, 2023, we would be able to conclude, because one of the key points within that agreement would ultimately, the cash gratuity would then come to an end. So there are technicalities that we are certainly hoping would be outright victories that we could score for our members, albeit the fact that they've had to make massive sacrifices during 2020, carry it through the process, and equally so absorb the ravages of inflation.
All right, so it might not be an agreement that everyone gets on board with, as you've explained so well, but currently the 7.5% offer is out with union members who will make a decision. When are we going to get finality on this, do you think?
Well, we are hoping very soon, Sally. By early next week, the PSCBC should be reconvening the discussions. The employer has placed that very 7.5% on the table. And in the course of what we are doing right now, our unions are busy vetting the members in order to give them the clearest indication of whether to sign, whether to proceed, and to focus on the coming round of negotiations, as we have indicated.
All right. Well, thank you so much for bringing us up to speed. It certainly has been a very difficult and protracted negotiation period. Riefdah Ajam, who is the Secretary General of Fedusa, that's the Federation of Unions of South Africa, explaining that it does look like that the majority of public servants' trade unions are in favour of the 7.5% deal. Of course, it still has to be fully signed off by members, and with a collective bargaining process, even though there are a few unions, among them Nahawu and Popcrew, it seems, who are not happy with this offer, the majority and democracy has to kick in at this point. But that doesn't mean, of course, that those unions who decide to reject the offer have to go along come what may. They are still entitled to reject and perhaps continue on their own. So it's all still at play to get this issue finally sorted out with public servants unions.